we want to stop being on the defensive as Christians. They've abused us for so long that we need to start acting against them, because what they're doing is wrong. They're not only abusing God's law, but man's law. They're abusing the rule of law, and they need to be held accountable. So we want to start maybe going after them, suing them, because they have unjustly arrested him too many times. And this is malicious persecution. It's clear as day.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Our Watch. I am Tim Thompson, and I am joined today with Nathanial Pawlowski. Nathaniel, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm great. Glad to have you on. For those of you online right now watching that don't know Nathaniel, Nathaniel is the son of Pastor Artur Pawlowski. He is the pastor that was arrested multiple times up in Canada. They had a great victory recently. But before we get into that victory, Nathaniel, if you would just kind of paint a quick picture, just 1 minute or less, and that's hard to do with the amount of stuff that your family has gone through, but just 1 minute or less, paint the picture for people who may not know your family story.
Well, over the last nearly 20 years, my dad has been a pastor. He's been feeding the poor on the streets of our city up in Canada, and for 16 years, he's been harassed by the government because they deem feeding the poor to be illegal, for preaching to be illegal. And for that, he's been arrested 16 times now for anywhere from, for reasons ranging from reading the Bible in a public park, for feeding the poor, for giving sermons, for opening his church, for inciting people to come to church. Of course, over the last 2 years, the heavy hammer of our tyrannical government fell on my dad, my family, and he was arrested 6 times since 2021 for opening his church, giving a sermon to the truckers. That was the latest one, and just for doing his job as a pastor. Hundreds of fines over the years, I think over 350, many recently ranging from $50 up to $1 million. There was a recent one for $100,000. So basically, we've been harassed by the government just for being Christian.
Wow. It's incredible to hear your family's story, the tenacity that you guys have, just your perseverance and your steadfastness for what is true and what is right, what is good and wholesome, and quite frankly, what is biblical. We look at what has happened over the last couple of years. Of course, your father have traveled. You've been on our show before. You've been out to the church. Just recently, you and your mother came out to the church. And I got to say, it was such an encouragement to my congregation. I know my audience right now is watching Our Watch, but I also am the senior pastor of 412 Church in the Temecula Valley. And I got to say, having your mom there to talk from a woman's perspective, the mother's perspective, the wife's perspective, it really was a blessing for the ladies of the church, and even for the men, even for myself, to hear your mother say, I held my husband in the palm of my hand. I could destroy my husband or I could build him up. And she chose to build him up and be there for him. It was really, really powerful. And, we prayed as a congregation for you guys, prayed for a victory, and you guys had a victory just this past week. Tell us about that victory, if you would.
Yeah, so on Friday, we actually received some amazing news, a huge victory. So I know many of you saw the arrest. I believe it was in May of 2021 on the highway with my dad, his hands behind his back, getting dragged in the rain on the highway, stopped on the highway just coming back from church. Of course, that arrest was for giving a sermon and not shutting down his church. And he was arrested that day. He spent 3 days on concrete with his brother, my uncle, and it was a pretty famous video. It kind of went viral. And for that arrest, he was found guilty. A crooked judge in our province found him guilty of civil contempt of court and made him liable. The sanctions were probation officer, community service, a ridiculous compelled speech order. So every time he spoke about public health matters, vaccines, masks, etc., he had to give a government-approved blurb where he was basically to say, my opinions are not the consensus of the medical community and the government, and basically what I'm saying is all my opinion and is not backed by science. Essentially, that's what he had to say anytime he gave a public statement about anything related to the pandemic, COVID, and all that. He was also given some other conditions and placed on heavy probation. And then the arrests after that were based off of that guilty verdict. So when he was arrested for attending a peaceful gathering or for giving a sermon to the truckers, the judges would say, oh, well, look, and the prosecutors would say, look, he's already been found guilty of something. That means he's a criminal. That means whatever you are going to say, judge, whatever the judge is going to decide has to be harsher because he's already been found guilty. But this past Friday, the Court of Appeal of Alberta overturned that crooked judge's decision and completely vindicated him. Found that that entire order, that entire verdict was illegal, completely unconstitutional, and he should not have been found guilty. So it was a huge win, and he was vindicated of those charges. And now everything's going to start unraveling because all those other arrests, all those other charges that were piled on were also based on that verdict. So they're going to have to start, those are going to be now appealed. Those are now going to have to go through the system again because that first verdict was overturned. So it's an amazing win, and it sort of gives us hope for justice in our country because
Absolutely.
We hadn't seen any justice in 2 years.
Yeah, no, this was an incredible victory. It wasn't just a victory. I was telling my congregation about this just this past week. It wasn't just a victory for your family or your congregation. It was a victory for the entire church in Canada. And not even that, I would say it's a victory for the church worldwide. It's important that men like your father and families like yours stand up for what is good and right. And if the reason we're in the predicament we're in right now is because pastors have been fickle. Pastors have been weak-spined. They haven't been engaged. They haven't been standing up for what's right. They don't want to offend anybody, even though the Word of God says it's an offense to those who are perishing. It is. It's an offense. You know, when you tell the truth to people, the truth is offensive. You know, but your father has stood firm in the face of adversity, and he's been a great example to many of the pastors who haven't stood up. And for the ones that have stood up, he's been a great source of inspiration. And it's great watching this great victory for you guys. I'm so grateful that it's happened. This isn't the end of the road, though. You guys still have a lot coming up. There's still a battle ahead of you. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so there are a lot of legal battles ahead. And I wouldn't just say that this decision affects the church and Christians in Canada or worldwide. This affects everyone. This affects anyone who stood up for freedom, all the business owners, all the mom and pop shops that decided to defy the orders, just regular people. This decision affects everyone, not just especially the church and Christians, but this decision affects everyone. So it's a huge win. But yeah, we have lots of legal battles. I mean, my dad's still on a version of house arrest. He has a curfew from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. He's still dealing with those truckers related to the arrest when he went down to give a speech at the trucker convoy protest. So he still has those charges, dozens of tickets, multiple arrests and all that. So we're still dealing with that. But this is a great first step, and we're seeing that God's working, and he hasn't abandoned us, and we know we win in the end. So it is a battle. It is tough. It is hard, but we're very hopeful, and we're just really grateful for all of you American support for my family and my dad.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't see it any other way. We need to be supporting you. This is the church. We talked about that when you and your mother were out at the congregation. It's so important that we get outside our own bubble and understand that there are Christians around the world that are hurting right now, and we need to understand that if one member of the body hurts, suffers, we all suffer, and we need to be there to comfort one another. So I'm grateful we were able to do that. Just briefly, if you would, from a son's perspective, watching your father go through what he's gone through, being arrested multiple times, and quite, recently, him spending 52 days in jail, and you going to the jail. You were instrumental in keeping the momentum of the protest against your father's arrest. What have you been experiencing as a son?
Well, I think everyone in the family deals with it a little bit differently, right? My uncle, my dad's brother, deals with it in his own way. My mom deals with it in her own way. Me, I sort of became immune to it because I witnessed so many arrests growing up. 6 years old when my dad was first arrested for reading the Bible. So I sort of became accustomed to seeing the state of our country in the way it is, that it is so corrupt, it is so evil, it's so anti-Christian, that I just grew up having to deal with this. And the way I dealt with the most recent arrest was I just had to keep myself busy. I wasn't going to mope around, just, cry and just do nothing. So I had to keep myself busy by taking action. I figured I'm not going to just stand by and watch this happen and do nothing. I'm going to do everything that is humanly in my power to try to get him out of prison, which involved, trying to mobilize Americans, because Americans are just, you're a powerhouse. I mean, you're so powerful as a church and as a political entity that you can pressure other countries to stop persecuting Christians. So what I saw was Americans phoning the government, phoning politicians, phoning the jail, phoning everybody to trying to stop this injustice that is happening to these pastors in Canada. So I was, as Americans, I was doing shows, media, and then of course I decided on day one I was going to go to the prison and I was going to protest there every single day until my dad was released. So us as a church and as a freedom movement in Calgary, anyone who supported my dad would come out to the prison. Sometimes, it was winter, so it was like minus 30 degrees Celsius some days, which is very, very cold, blizzards and that. But we had a group ranging from 30 people to 200 people, 250 people one day. So that was great to see. I was there every single day until they moved him to a different city 3 hours away. So I was there for 46 days straight. We would do Jericho marches around the prison, blowing trumpets. I was there with speakers. I would have speakers. I would speak to the prison guards because we knew that there was injustice happening in that prison, corruption, abuse of power. So we would speak to the guards. We would play music. We would have singers. Well, we would have worship. We would have prayer. We would anoint the place, and we would do 7 trumpet blasts every day. So that's the way I dealt with it. That's what I was doing for 46 days. And then they moved my dad to another city, and it was more difficult to mobilize people to go there. But for one day, it was my dad's birthday, and I got a group of people to head down there to convoy over to there, and we sang happy birthday outside of the prison and prayed and did some worship. So yeah, that's how I dealt with it. That was kind of, I felt, my role in this arrest, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your dad, your whole family appreciates all of your hard work and stepping up and leading in that moment. How is it that people, like I said, one legal hurdle has been jumped, and what a great victory for you guys, but it's not over. You guys still have many legal battles ahead. How can people connect with you guys, support your family and what you're doing, and also how can they connect with you personally?
Well, you can go to our website, streetchurch.ca, streetchurch.ca. Of course, we run a full-time ministry. Even when my dad was in prison or facing, the full force of the injustice system and the government, we were still feeding the poor 3 times a week, preaching and feeding them. So we still run a ministry called Street Church, and you can support my dad through that website, help us out that way. We also... We're thinking now that we want to stop being on the defensive as Christians. They've abused us for so long that we need to start acting against them, because what they're doing is wrong. They're not only abusing God's law, but man's law. They're abusing the rule of law, and they need to be held accountable. So we want to start maybe going after them, suing them, because they have unjustly arrested him too many times, and this is malicious persecution. It's clear as day. Mm-hmm. So we want to start going after them. So you can go to the website, streetchurch.ca, and help out that way. You can follow my dad on Facebook, Artur Pawlowski, or YouTube, Artur Pawlowski TV, and connect that way.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nathaniel. I appreciate you. I appreciate your entire family, your ministry, and just the inspiration you are to me as a pastor and to my family and my congregation. We're grateful to know you, and we'll continue to lift you up in prayer. And again, thank you for being on Our Watch today.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
God bless you. I want to thank everybody for tuning in online today. We'll continue to keep you up to date what's going on with the Pawlowski family. So God bless you guys. We'll see you next time right here on Our Watch with Tim Thompson.